When you're asking this question of is it easier to learn to play the harp when you've already learned piano, what are the advantages and disadvantages I'm going to have when learning to play the harp? Is it going to be hard for me? Is it going to be a bit easier? So let's first look at the pros of when you've learned to play the piano already. Firstly, no matter what instrument you've learned, when you approach learning a new instrument, you already have the advantage of having learned to coordinate your hands. And with piano, you've actually learned to coordinate playing different things in your two hands at the same time, which is the same as the harp. And you also have learned to play in time. You've got your rhythm developed, musicality, and many pianists would also have learned how to read sheet music, so that would be an advantage for you. You can just get straight to learning actually how to play the harp. And also when you've learned another instrument, you've usually picked up some things about how to practice effectively, and that really is an advantage when you're approaching learning to play a new instrument like the harp. But there's also some disadvantages for people who have learned piano first. Maybe some of you have experienced this. When you first come to the harp, it's like orientated quite differently to the piano, and it can be a little confusing at first. With piano, we're used to playing along like this. The low notes are down there, the high notes are up there. With the harp, it's completely different. The low notes are down there, the high notes are closer to me, and also our hands are mirroring each other instead of being side by side. So whereas with piano, the lowest notes are left hand, pinky, right hand, thumb, and then going like that. With the harp, the lowest notes are in both hands, with the fourth finger going up to the highest notes in the thumb. The great thing about it is that both hands are playing this with the same fingers to play C, D, E, F, for example. But it does take a little bit of a mental shift for pianists. Another thing that's quite an adjustment for pianists is the hand position. So with piano, yes, we do need to learn good hand position, but it's kind of a little bit more intuitive to place your fingers like this. Whereas with harp, having your thumbs up and your fingers down, I found that quite an adjustment because I played piano before I played harp, and it really is quite different, and it feels like a bit of a brain shift. Another thing that shifted my brain was having to place multiple fingers in advance before plucking. It was like I had to look ahead before I was playing the particular notes I'm playing right now. I don't know, there was something to get my brain around this placing and then playing one note at a time. It took me a while. Another thing that's quite different for us as pianists is the way we use our wrists. With piano, a lot of us have been taught to float off the notes with our wrists leading, and that gives you relaxation when you're playing piano. But with harp, our wrists need to be a lot stronger to be able to pluck the strings in the motion that is healthy. And when we float off the strings, we don't have the wrists going into what I call a heel. And so I found that tricky. You can see in some of my earlier videos that I did often have my wrists coming up, and I think some of that was because I played the piano first. I think the biggest disadvantage when you are coming to learn the harp from the piano is that because you are so excited and you know how to play a tune fluently, you often want to just skip over harp technique, or maybe you don't realize you're doing it because you're trying to pick out a tune and you're just so excited to hear that melody coming together. And we actually try to progress too quickly, faster than our technique can actually support us. And so a lot of pianists who come to the harp have to go back and fix technique problems later. They've built up bad habits because they just wanted to hear that song fluently played, and they kind of didn't do all the right building blocks. So for your long-term success, learn the technique from the start, and then you can use all those advantages of what you've already learned from your piano playing. Because what will happen is if you don't get that technique, you will limit your progress and you won't be able to get past a certain point in your harp playing without going back and kind of breaking the bad habits and forming the foundations again. Now, if you're wondering what those mistakes are that you really need to avoid in your harp technique, you can watch the video where I talked about how I fixed some of those mistakes. You can click here. But I am so glad that I went from playing the piano, which I still love, to playing the harp, which just has such a beautiful tone. And I know that if you take that leap to learn to play the harp, you won't regret it. It's such a beautiful instrument. So have fun with it.